They say that a week is a long time in politics, which would make 4 months an eternity, as Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan can confirm. Parliamentary elections back in June left the ruling AK Party weakened down to a minority position, but fresh elections last week saw the party surge back into power with a majority. So what happened? There was the stability issue. Millions of Turks clearly sided with Erdogan, who was telling them that the conflict with the Kurdish community, not to mention ISIL next door in Syria and Iraq, both represented real threats. There's also the matter of the messengers, the media side of this story. Over the past decade, the Turkish news media have grown supine and fearful for their future, and those fears are far from irrational. Just before the polls opened, the Koza İpek media group had its head office in Istanbul raided, its board of directors replaced, and many of its journalists fired, which adds up to even more newsprint and airtime that will back a ruling party once lauded for its pluralism, but whose style, modeled on its de facto leader, has grown more and more authoritarian. The term terror media, once reserved for Kurdish news outlets, is now being thrown at all kinds of journalists in Turkey and some of the news organizations that they work for. And that was when the AK Party was in a weakened position. What happens now that the government has a fresh majority? And what will that mean for what remains of journalism in Turkey? Our starting point this week is Istanbul. On the day after the election, basking in victory, President Erdogan had a few words for the outside world and the global news media.
Şu anda da işte yaklaşık %50 ile Türkiye'de bir parti iktidar oldu. Dolayısıyla buna da tüm dünyanın saygı duyması gerekir ve tüm dünyada da böyle bir olgunluğu ben
Tayyip Erdogan often takes issue with the international media, but that's nothing compared to how the AK Party deals with the news media in Turkey itself. Just 4 days before the vote, there was turmoil at the Istanbul offices of the Koza İpek media group. Koza İpek news outlets had been consistently critical of the AK Party. A judge then ordered its bosses out and sent new ones in.
Şimdi düşünün, yani böyle bir şeyi
Just think, they entered the newspaper building by force in full view of the police. And even though the legal proceedings were not yet complete, they shut us out. They took over the management. They put the offices behind a police cordon, as if it was some sort of terrorist lair. I don't understand how this happened in Turkey. How could Turkey, after all its democratic experiences, hit rock bottom like this?
Some context. The Koza İpek group is affiliated with the Gulenist movement, followers of the US-based Islamic cleric Fethullah Gulen, a longtime political ally of President Erdogan. But in 2013, Gulen fell out with the AK Party, which now calls its former allies terrorists, and the media outlets linked to Gulenists terror media. The AK Party's supporters in the media, such as Cem Kucuk, who writes a column for Star, use similar terminology and sometimes refer to the AK Party using the first-person plural.
We do not confiscate all opposition papers, only those that are related to the Gulenist terrorist organization. Other papers, such as Cumhuriyet or Hurriyet, will not be confiscated. For us, the Gulen movement is literally a terrorist organization. There is a structure that finances it, the pro-Gulen terrorist structure. To confiscate Koza İpek group money is about stopping the financing of terrorism.
The AK Party is not the only political force accused of running an election campaign built on fear. There are plenty. But it wasn't just voters running scared in Turkey. Many in the media were too.
The politics of fear were effective, and that was reflected in the election results. The media in Turkey performed very poorly in the face of this test. News was reported in a one-sided manner. No one was brave enough to find out what was really going on. Whether it was the Suruç massacre, the bombing of the HDP rally in Diyarbakir, the Ankara bombing, the media only reported from the mouths of official sources. They performed very poorly and in some sense contributed to the spread of this climate of fear.
Hizmet etmiş oldu.
At least half of the media is under direct government or President Erdogan's influence, and the rest of the media, this is not a free media which can express itself. I mean, they are all branded as collaborators, fifth column, attacking the interests of the nation. So government media is accusing all others. Whatever they say is a kind of propaganda, terrorist propaganda.
Here's one example of that. On October 14th, a panel discussion on CNN Turk included a human rights worker from Diyarbakir who said that he opposed the government's position. He is now facing charges, and the channel is under investigation as well.
Someone appears on CNN saying that the PKK is not a terrorist organization, because this is something that people believe in Turkey, and that person is immediately taken into custody on suspicion of terrorist propaganda. When you say these words, you face an investigation for terrorism. If someone has said these words on your air, a terrorism investigation is also launched against your television channel. Right now, being a terrorist in Turkey is very easy. If you listen to them, all of us are terrorists.
Bunların gözünde terörist olduk. Terör medyası yıllardır hep...
For years, terror media has been a term used for the Kurdish media, in the sense of the terrorist or pro-PKK Kurdish media. The media embraced this term fully. Suddenly, the Gulen movement and its media organs, which were once allies of the AK Party, also came to constitute the terrorist media. If we follow this trajectory, one day everyone opposed to government will be branded and tried as terrorists. In fact, we've already come very close to this situation.
Sometimes the hostility and threats against the media come from other journalists. When Ahmet Hakan of CNN Turk and Hurriyet was under fire for a perceived pro-HDP, pro-Kurdish bias, pro-AK Party columnist Cem Kucuk wrote, "You think you're still living in the days when Hurriyet was running the country. If we wanted to, we could crush you like a fly. We've been merciful until today, and you are still alive." 3 weeks later, Ahmet Hakan was assaulted by 4 men and left with broken ribs. Kucuk denies that his writings provoked that attack and remains unrepentant.
It wasn't found provocative by lots of people. It's not true. Ahmet Hakan explicitly supported the PKK terrorist organization. Go ask on the streets. Republicans and HDP supporters will tell you. Yes, Ahmet Hakan supported us, supported the PKK. He supported the HDP. There's no problem with that. But he supported the PKK. He said that the state is causing the bloodshed. Why shouldn't I criticize this? What's more natural than me criticizing this?
That's one of the Turkish media's chronic failings. They seldom stand together. An example, in 2009, the Erdogan government did not like the coverage it was getting from the Doğan Yan media group. It then accused the company of abuse of power and fined it for back taxes. Media outlets affiliated with the Gulenist movement, still supporting the AK Party at the time, failed to back Doğan Yan. Opportunism trumped solidarity. And today, it's Gulenist media that are under attack, reaping what they sowed in 2009 with their silence.
Many thought that, well, it would never come to them, their turn will never come. So they haven't been outspoken. Nobody stood up against this kind of murky government-media relations. On the contrary, many tried to benefit from this sort of environment. That's why Turkey came to this point of total disaster of suppression on the media and free speech.
On the download, our viewers weigh in on the state of journalism in Turkey.
While there are some independent voices and there are some really great initiatives like 140 journals, like 98 Haber, like BNet and the T24, for instance, and a lot of brave journalists who are stepping down from their previous publications to actually do a little bit more independent writing, there is not enough support for these journalists, but also in general, Turks are trusting the press less and less. So I think this is one of the biggest challenges.
Critical media outlets are now waiting for new series of sanctions, such as seizures, threats, raids and arrests. One by one, journalism is being more and more dangerous in Turkey.